Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim and I'm representing PGMI-Peshawar today. Today we have a very special webinar on Pakistan Medical Commission, and we have our esteemed guest with us, Dr. Arshad Taqi, President of PMC, and we also have our Chief Executive Officer of PGMI, Professor Dr. Mohammad Arif Khan Sahab. And the co-moderator with me today will be Dr. Imad Ali Shah. To begin, I would like to ask Professor Mohammad Arif Khan Sahab to please introduce our guest.
Thank you, Ibrahim, and thank you all our viewers and the participants who are with us today. This has been one of the series of webinars that we have been conducting for the last 6 months. And today, this is a very special day for us because today we are not discussing the leadership webinar. Today we are discussing a very important aspect of our professional life, and that is Pakistan Medical Commission. And as you know, recently there has been great changes in the medical regulatory system in the country. The PMDC has been replaced by Pakistan Medical Commission, and there are a lot of things that are not clear to our viewers. So today we have a very special guest, and he is the Dr. Arshad Taqi. He's a good friend of mine. I'm so glad that he accepted our invitation to be with us on this Saturday. Dr. Arshad Taqi is a well-known consultant anesthesiologist in the country, and his reputation is basically in the field of critical care in the country. He has been promoting the critical care, the pain care, and the anesthesia in the country for the last many, many years. Apart from this, recently he has been given the responsibility of to be the president of Pakistan Medical Commission, and I am sure he will do a wonderful job and he will come to our expectations. He is on the board of so many anesthesia-related boards. He is an examiner of FCPS in anesthesia. He is also on the app care, which is an anesthesia, pain and intensive care, published from Pakistan. He has been on various administrative positions, and right now I am sure all his focus is on the Pakistan Medical Commission. So thank you very much, Taqi, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure is all mine, and it's a privilege having, of course, it goes without saying, as you rightly pointed out, we go back a long way together. And we've known each other, so it was really a pleasure being invited to this forum. This gives us an opportunity to not only for me to present up my ideas, but in the form of actually your questions. That would be an opportunity for us to have a feedback and the anxieties and concerns of the communities, particularly the postgraduate medical education, postgraduates and the specialists working in the country. Their input is so vital to our decision making, and that would actually give us an opportunity to have an exchange of ideas. So that's a pleasure, really.
Great, thank you very much. So, Taqi, let's start. I will start with a few questions, and then in the meantime, questions would be coming from our participants as well, and we will be asking those questions as well. And it is a very informal discussion, so let's hope the audience would enjoy this discussion. So I will start with the first question, and that is that PMDC was doing a reasonable job for the last so many years. So why was this need felt that PMDC was all of a sudden abolished and this Pakistan Medical Commission was brought? Why couldn't you make some amendments in the constitution, because it was a very well-established institution and known world over for its role in regulating the medical education in the country? So why couldn't you just make few amendments in that to make it more suitable to the current situation and establishing totally a new organization?
Okay, so let me start with one clarification, please. So, I mean, we, the functionaries of the Pakistan Medical Commission, the council, actually did not make the law. The law was handed over to us. So what I can talk about is the background of why the law was in the light of the now new law given, uh, the way we understand it. So we will talk in the context of current existing law and everything that that comes up as the background is actually can be better answered by people who actually framed the law, which is the lawmakers, which is the parliament. But of course, my being there means that I am in principle in agreement with the act. That is why I've agreed to become a part of this. So that's how I stand and defend it. And anything that I say about the background is not meant to be, would not be, should not be taken as a criticism on Pakistan Medical and Dental Council. So it would just be as a background information. So please don't take that as a criticism of what was happening and not. That was happening in a certain different context. Now we are working in a different context. So coming back to the background, I would actually start off with what are the challenges that the medical profession is facing today. So if you allow me, I'll just give a very brief list of challenges that we have, and then tell you about what Pakistan Medical Commission is supposed to do, as opposed to what Pakistan Medical and Dental Council was doing and was supposed to do according to the 1962 Act and its subsequent modifications, amendments. And then in that context, then we can move forward on what we will be doing. The challenges, as I see it, is first of all from the society. Now, as opposed to 1962, we have a very well-informed society. Whether that information is correct or not correct, but this society, today's society, is much more informed about their own healthcare. It could be misinformation, as I said, about the role of a doctor, about what is expected of a doctor. So the doctor, the concept of a doctor back in 1962, which was some kind of a healer who would just deliver and that knew everything, is no longer there now. So, and as a consequence, we doctors are actually at times at the receiving end of that of a lot of critique from the society. It is important for us, and it was a realization that we doctors actually were then, if you allow me to say, are actually living in a cocoon where we are not really understanding as a community. I mean, I'm not talking about individuals, the impact this is having on our relationship with the society. So there was a need to redefine the not only the role of the doctor, but what is expected of a doctor. And in line of that, we needed to actually then go back and revisit our curriculum and say if there is something else need to be incorporated, and we can then, and so in that was one area where we needed to be clear on what a doctor is meant to be. The second impact that we are having is from technology. So once again, with the change in technology and the rapid change in technologies, we need to once again have a doctor who was not just someone who at one point in time gotten a degree and then therein became a healer, just went on providing that process of care based on that degree earned at that one point in time. So that also means that redefining the whole curriculum and the way we are learning. So we a fundamental shift towards our understanding of what a doctor is, what is expected of a doctor and what a doctor should be. And the third challenge that we are facing is once again from globalization and increased kind of movement of doctors across the borders, which means that now our relationship with the other regulatory authorities is of extreme importance. Now, we cannot work in isolation. We cannot just say that Pakistan can have rules and laws which are our concern. Now, the way we run our practices, the way we award our licenses, the way we award our degrees is of concern globally, because the other regulatory authorities would then actually be recognizing our doctors on the basis of how this regulatory body is acting. So that was kind of a background wherein we think there is a changed environment wherein we needed to have a radical change in the way the regulator works. Coming back to Pakistan Medical and Dental Council, uh, they they had essentially two functions. One was regulation of education, and the other one was basically the regulation of practice, which means they were the licensing regulator and also the practice regulator. Uh, the educational regulation part, they were very much involved in. They were to the extent that they were actually managing practically a lot various aspects of undergraduate education. However, the licensing part was sadly in a way lacking in terms of emphasis on the process of licensing. And I'll give you an example. If you go to Pakistan Medical Commission website, what you'll find is that we have got 270 something thousand licensed doctors. Out of that, you get the number of male doctors, the number of female doctors, the number of dental practitioners, and that's where the list stops. That's where the information we have stops. Why? Because we don't even know how many of them are alive, how many of them are dead, how many of them are practicing, how many of them, we do know that some of them have actually acquired postgraduate qualifications and are working as specialists in various capacities, but we don't even know where they are working unless they are working affiliated with a teaching institution, in which case then we know that they are a part of a teaching faculty. Now, this is not the kind of information that a regulator should be having. The regulator should have complete information on how, because based on the information provided by the regulator, the policy makers then can develop health policies. We can then make informed decisions about where the doctors are wanted, what kind of doctors are wanted. How do you then plan your postgraduate and graduate education? So these kind of information was sadly lacking, and we have just started working on it. So that's where this law came in, because now what this law has done is this has shifted the primary responsibility of licensing and regulation of licensing to Pakistan Medical Commission, and taken part of the education part, the undergraduate education part, and handed it over to the universities, which essentially were always the ones which are awarding degrees. So what we know is that a student gets admitted in a medical college. The medical colleges teach them at different times. The universities then hold examinations, and at the end of their course, it is the universities that are providing them the degree, the postgraduate, the graduate degree, on the basis of which they then become licensed practitioners. But that part was also taken over Pakistan Medical and Dental Council. So that part has been taken away from the Medical and Dental Council, from the Commission, and given to the universities, where the lawmakers thought it rightfully belongs, that they need to take ownership of undergraduate medical education. However, as a regulator, we are the ones who are supposed to tell them what that process of education should be, what is expected of them. So the Pakistan Medical Commission actually sets the standard for undergraduate and postgraduate education. They are the ones which give the curriculum, but execution, as it rightfully belongs, is with the universities. So that's where the first fundamental shift has occurred, that now Pakistan Medical Commission is essentially focusing on licensing and the process of licensing and regulating the licensing for the whole thing at both undergraduate and postgraduate level. So that's one thing. The second part was that Pakistan Medical and Dental Council had all the powers concentrated in one office, that was the office of the registrar, and the council, which was more of an advisory body, which would set the rules. Concentration of powers in that one actually, and then at times gave rise to conflicts between the council and the office of the registrar. We have history of the secretary of the council going into litigation with the registrar, which went right up to because the responsibilities and the various roles were not clearly defined. So what now they did was they actually went on and had a 3-layered system, and it's important for everyone to understand that system, wherein every role is very, very clearly defined. So on the administrative side, you've got the medical authority. The medical authority is actually responsible for all the day-to-day work functioning of the commission. And then there is the academic board. Academic board is supposed to set the curriculum, set the standards for undergraduate education, set the standards for faculty, set the standards for postgraduate medical education, set the standard for all examinations. The council actually is the policy making and the approving authority. So everything coming from the authority, coming from the board, goes to the council for approval. So there is this system wherein there is a system of checks wherein it is not that anyone who is making a proposal is also then approving that proposal. So there are those layers of decision making, which ensures that there is a system of feedback and formal approval. So that's the kind of, very broadly, very crudely speaking, the structure of the Pakistan Medical Commission. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, very well. There's also a third part of PMC, which is the National Medical Authority.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate its function as well?
Yeah, so the functions actually are very clearly defined. This authority consists of 7 members. That is with one executive member. So that is member of education and evaluation, the member examination, member licensing, member legal, member IT, member administration, and member finance. So as you would realize that these are those 7 core functions. Essentially, the three core functions are education and evaluation. The function of education and evaluation is that this member actually, who is also serving as the executive member, actually chairs the authority. The education and evaluation actually ensures support, helps the board providing all the information on the basis of which they set the standards. So they facilitate the board in setting the standards, recommending the standards, then implementing those standards, following up then also the standards of continuing medical education. So it's responsible for undergraduate, postgraduate, and graduates and CME standards and their implementation. The member examination is actually responsible for 2 examinations which the medical commission is supposed to hold, that is National MD-CAT and National Licensing Exam, and the third one, which is the National Equivalence Board for migration of foreign students into undergraduate colleges at any point during the course of study. So that's another area. So these 3 examinations are under member examination, and the whole licensing is under member licensing. So these are those 3. The other 4 essentially are the support function that any organization needs. You need finance, you need legal, you also need IT. IT is now becoming one of the core members of the commission, because we are actually moving entirely towards a digital platform. So IT is actually core thing in this. And then, of course, there is a member legal, a member administration, which is for HR and administration purposes. So that's the medical authority. So medical authority is actually employed. They've got their own hierarchies in each, but they work as one under the chairman of the other. And what's their job is to submit proposals for all kind of things and get approval from the commission, and then report to the commission. So that's the medical authority.
Yeah, great. So that was a very detailed answer. I hope everybody would understand the different functions of the different parts of the PMC now. Now, Taqi, we have been living with the PMDC for a long time. And we have developed our own comfort zones as doctors, as students, as institutions, as the owner of institutions, as the government. Now we have a totally different thing. So how do you think the Pakistan Medical Commission will affect us as professionally, as institutions, as the owner of institutions, and as well as students?
So first thing is, yes, we we are all gotten so used to it. You get used to our parents being there, and at some point in time, we have to grow up and take responsibilities for things ourselves. So there are certain things in which we have to actually move on, and take responsibility for ourselves. Pakistan Medical Commission is not absolving itself of the responsibility. It is just that we do not wish to be that perpetual grandfather who keeps on telling you, now do this, now do this, now do this. We are only, what we want is for Pakistan Medical Commission to define the boundaries, and within those very clearly defined boundaries, the institutions, at all kind of institutions, the universities, the colleges, the practitioners have the liberty to then freedom to make their own choices. So we do not want to be very prescriptive about it. I understand that when you go on and say this, people are actually shifted out of their that comfort zone, as you rightly pointed out, that if we are used to someone taking care of all those things, then suddenly when we are asked to take care of a few things ourselves, then we do get in a bit of a discomfort. But the boundaries are very clearly defined. So what we are doing is we are telling you, fine, within these boundaries, you go and make your own choices, make your own decisions, have that flexibility to move. We are not going to be prescribing everything. So I think it's just a matter of understanding all this and this shift as we interact with each other. And one thing I can tell you, that as I speak, I have received about 10 emails that I am constantly receiving, and messages on WhatsApp and everything, right? Not only from doctors, but from students, from people who are even applying for medical colleges. And we are always open to answering them, replying to emails, clarifying things so that people do not feel any confusion. So whenever they want, they can contact us. We'll make sure that we clarify everything. And we'll actually help and support everyone get used to that freedom that we are proposing.
Great. So let me talk about another important thing that happened a year back. If you remember, PMDC at that time, they went into a very extensive exercise of academic inspection. And it was for the first time that I came to know, because I was part of that those inspections, and it actually generated a lot of interest and awareness about medical education. Things we never heard of, we came to know in those inspections, and actually medical colleges went through a process of transformation as a result of those inspections. So that was a very useful thing. But since then, everything stopped. I understand there were a lot of legal problems at that point, but I think now PMC is out of all those legal problems. And we should be back on the track. So what is happening to those inspections? Are they totally gone? This was the futile exercises, or you are taking the results of those and you are working on them, and they will be used for the improvement of the medical education in the country.
So I mean, if I can understand, and they were very well conducted. And interestingly, as you were have been a part of this, you would realize that when they started that inspection, there was this initial disclaimer And that disclaimer was that these inspections are actually designed, meant to be a feedback to you, and it will not have an adverse consequence. That was the reassurance, because they were designed to be sensitize the institutions to their deficiencies, give them a feedback, and which would be then followed by subsequent inspections, which would then have a consequence. I think we all agree that that was the spirit in it, and they had a huge impact. Now, what happened was that when the results of these inspections were to be shared publicly, then of course there's some institutions went and they got this right of publishing this and making this public, restricted by the court on the same basis that no, this was supposed to not have an impact. So, but that inspections are not gone. Now the law makes it mandatory for PMC to hold inspections and for the universities to hold inspections. But now there is another shift now here. So let me start with undergraduate. So undergraduate inspections, the process of inspection at the time of formation of a medical college now is the inspections of the college, which is just the college, the education part is with the universities and HSC. The inspections of the teaching hospitals, be that undergraduate training, be that house job, be that postgraduate, lies directly with Pakistan Medical Commission. Because what was realized was that at that point, that whereas the colleges were okay with complying with the structural requirements of the college and everything, there were serious problems in two areas. One area was actually the way the subject was being taught. I mean, the student affairs, a number of colleges actually didn't really do well. They failed to satisfy the inspectors on what were they doing when in terms of ensuring instructions to the students was executed properly. The other was the hospital. And we realized that whereas the hospitals were okay in times of structure and those facilities, equipment and everything, the real problem was the patients, the kind of patient flow, the teaching that was actually going on in the hospital. So that is directly with the Pakistan Medical Commission. Now, this process is now going to start in a way that the academic board, which has been entrusted to form the standards, is actually preparing the standards now, standards for inspections. So those standards would be shared. Once they are approved, they would be shared with the institutions, and then the inspections would begin. And those inspections, we are hoping that we are going to start those inspections within 6 months, inshallah. That inspection, there's another important thing about inspections, that PMC is not going to, and by law, it is not supposed to hold that inspection once as that one-off exercise. It has to be a perpetual thing. And you really, the law says that they can inspect at any time, which means that now we are actually more interested not just in what the setup is, but how it is functioning. Those inspections are going to be there. Those inspections are going to have two targets. One target is, of course, to have a consequence on how those institutions are rated. But second, and even more important, is that as we move forward and we're giving choices to the people to select their colleges, to provide them with that critical information that they can use in selecting their colleges on the strengths and weaknesses of the college that they're selecting. So those institutions, those inspections are going to be there, and they are going to start, inshallah, as soon as we got the standards in place. We are working on that.
Great, and as I was a witness at that point, I'm sure they will enhance the standards of medical education in this country. Very useful that I found at that point. Taqi, I would like to go into another area, and that is the continuous medical education. And if you remember, PMDC at one point introduced this concept of continuous medical education by introducing the mandatory credit hours.
Great, awesome.
And that generated interest in the on-job training and the education. However, due to some reason, they were discontinued. And so far, that system does not exist in Pakistan, also it does exist in many other countries. So does PMC has any plans to re-implement that concept and start with the mandatory credit hours?
Interestingly, it's not just plans. Now it is mandatory by law. The 2020 Act actually mandates PMC to hold these CMEs. So what we are doing is, people are asking, and we have actually clarified, but a lot of people have not really been informed that we are renewing this licenses for 2 years this time. And during this period of 2 years, we have to shift, and we are mandated to shift from renewal to revalidation. And the basis of that revalidation is going to be CMEs. I may actually share here that we are actually moving to a completely digital platform, in which the way we're looking at it, when a student enters a medical college, that student is then given a unique ID. And when that person graduates and gets a license, that unique ID becomes the person's practice license, and that stays with this person for the rest of the doctor with the rest of their lives. And everything is incorporated in that. So in that platform, we are integrating it with the CMEs. One committee of the academic board actually is working on the CMEs. So as soon as they have done that initial work, then we are going to go back and register those institutions which are providing CMEs and the CMEs themselves. Remember, CMEs, that was a great step. I, as an educationist and someone who was conducting conferences and courses, realized that suddenly our attendance increased manifold as a consequence of those points, mandatory points, and we are moving towards that. We need to make sure that the job is not policing, the job is facilitatory. So if we need to incorporate those CMEs, we have to take care of people working in distant areas. So we need to make sure that CMEs may not do not involve those going through processes which really disrupt your life. It's just more about acquiring those updates which are important. So we may be using a lot more of digital platforms, the apps and those kind of things. But yes, CMEs are going to be not only mandatory, but we are totally shifting to revalidation, which will help us keep track of the doctors as well on where they stand, what they're doing, where they are.
Okay, great. So now we should be prepared, and we should start thinking about.
I suppose you start not only preparing but preparing to get your CMEs registered and incorporated, because we would be looking for that.
Yeah. So we must be prepared for it. This is a very important point everybody should notice. Taqi, let's go into this medical college admission, because nowadays they are going on, and we all know that there is a chaos in the students and amongst the parents as well, because the system is totally new. First, the MD was introduced, and there was no prior information, in the sense that PMC came into being in the second half of the year, and then immediately this was introduced. So the system of education in the country is provincial. So every province has their different curriculum, different syllabus, and FEC is different in every part of the country. So now there's one exam, and the different provinces are at different standards. That created confusion and may not be, the merit may not be reflective of the true nature of the student educational level. That is one thing. The other thing is, Now, after the MDK, a list of thousands of students have been given to the medical colleges, and they have to interview all of them within a span of 2 or 3 days. And uh, the students are running between cities and between the colleges, and nobody knows what's going to happen to them. It would have been very much easier if you had allowed the existing system to work this time, prepare yourself in a better way, make it more digital, make it more convenient, and the students would have understood it, the institution would have understood it, and next time it would have been very easier.
Yeah, so okay, so I'll start with MDCAT first. So MDCAT, first thing is that it's often asked that you should have let the provinces hold the MDCAT this year. Our problem is that when something becomes a law, then you cannot say that, okay, so law has come into effect, but we will start following it next year. We were actually caught in a more difficult situation than the students or anybody else, because now suddenly we are asked on the 5th of October to hold a national MDCAT, which is a mandatory requirement by law. There was no way out of it. And not only that, but reach those goal of completing the admission process so that the new academic year does not suffer. So I can tell you that that was not only a pleasant. We would have been very happy if we had that 1 year and we would have had time to prepare. But that was something that we were mandated to do by law. So we had that MDCAT. We went through the whole process. There was a lot of issues on that. At the end, there was this question of out of course questions, marking. And let me tell you that these issues were raised on every forum, including every high court in the country, every province. As recently as about 2 weeks back, this was very exhaustively reviewed by the Honorable Chief Justice of Peshawar High Court, who then, after kind of exhaustive review of the entire process, said, all right, these questions were acceptable and they were well within the domain of the. And if we look at and go back and review the whole results and look at the analysis of the result, there were students doing very well in the same proportion that they used to do in the provincial exams. So it was just a bit of, yes, I agree, getting people out of their comfort zones. But now MDCAT is gone. That has been vetted by the board. So let's move on to the admission process. Let me share something with you. So initially, the first thing is that the law says that private medical colleges shall hold their own admissions. The second thing that law says is that they will have to announce their admission policy 1 year in advance, and in light of and get it vetted by Pakistan Medical Commission and put it up as a public notice so that people 1 year in advance know what that admission policy is, so that they can make that. They are supposed to announce their fee structure for the entire course 3 months in advance so that people can make their informed choice. This year they had not, except for Aga Khan and NUMS, which had their policy already in place. All other institutions had not announced their admission policy. So we told them that since you have not announced this, so for this 1 year, Pakistan Medical Commission is going to handle your admission process. So we set up a portal. That portal was supposed to be working in a way that, so the student makes their choices. On the basis of their choices, there would be a merit list displayed automatically, and everything was supposed to be going at automatically. So if I select 100 medical colleges and I had a freedom to select as many as I wanted, then automatically that list of first 100 students would go up along with the list of waiting list as well for that. So I then make a decision, and I have to make a decision within 1 week to go and select the college that I want. And it would go on that as the other, when I picked one, the rest of the seats would fall vacant and the merit would move up. And the idea was that in 15-day period, automatically every college would get, or every student would get their choice. They do not, we in this system, but not guaranteeing the medical colleges any 100 seats. And let me just kind of detract a little from here, I digress a little from here and say that the problem with central inductions in previous years was that the central inductions were actually guaranteeing those 100 seats to every private medical college, irrespective of what their performance was. Because I, as admitting university, is guaranteeing that I'll give you that 100 seats. And unless those 100 seats are filled, the process would go on. What we were saying here that at this date, the process is going to close. And if the students have not selected you as a medical college and you got 20 seats remaining vacant, so be it. Next year, you got to improve yourself so that students are willing to come and pay their precious money and study with you. That was the whole idea. Now, that would have given the students the freedom, that would have not given the colleges to call students and say you pay your fee, because that was an automatic process. What happened was that the colleges went to the courts. We had a choice of going on with the courts and the battles in that. So when the court told us to arbitrate, we said, all right. So they wanted some freedom to have some interview. So eventually, on the court's order, there was this compromise. We said, fine, we will prepare a merit list for 80%, give it to you, and now it is your job to then admit the students and give them. What it has given now is students the freedom to select their own college. Because I am no one to say that if you want to study medicine, you'll have to pay your full fee, but you still got to go and study 200 miles from here in a remote college where you don't want to go and study. So you got your choice. Students have to make their choices. However, they also want not to hold to one choice and also keep the other options open. That is actually what is happening. So the college, they got their merit in 5 colleges. In an ideal world, they would select one of the colleges where their merit comes, and they would pay their fees and take it. And the rest of the seats would fall vacant. So what the students want now is to not only hang on to this 5 colleges or one of those 5 colleges, but also have the option to go on and select another one later if a seat falls vacant there. That is the only problem there. We want to take our choices and still keep the options open for others. And I keep on telling the students that, look here, at some point in time, you have to make your choice. The colleges are going to actually pressurize the students and say, "Aap jaldi se fees jama karao," because they want their seats filled. We are not interested in filling their seats. We want the students to make the right choices on the basis of what they have. And if the colleges have not been able to convince enough students to pay their fee and study there, so be it. And that's one way of actually weeding out those colleges which are providing substandard education. I can understand that there is once again this disruption, but as you see, as 15th February and the deadline approaches, people will start making their decisions. Even during last years and during those central inductions, everybody did not get their ideal. Everybody did not get admission where they wanted. The people on top merit always got where they wanted. So if I am at the top of the line, I will get my choices. Its only problem occurs when you are slightly below the top of the line and you want to get to a top college and you are trying to somehow find an opportunity. And that's where they are getting confused. So they got to make their decisions now. And they will make their decisions. It's just initial few days of the colleges trying to pressurize students so they
They just want to get a commitment out of them. And students, I don't think they should be forced into making this decision. They can simply say, all right, I'll wait. Or if the college is acceptable. Now, if I would say if a college is not acceptable to me, why am I even bothered about that college? And if that college is acceptable, then at some point I need to go and make that choice. So I've given you the background. This is not a solution that we had wanted for this year. Coming year, it is a contract between the students and the colleges. They will have enough time to make informed decisions. We, as a consequence of our inspections, inshallah, would have made those reports public so that people can decide. I can understand that some of those colleges are increasing their fees exorbitantly, but then people need to make up their mind on how much are they willing to pay to get a degree from a college where they don't think it is worth it. So we also need to make that decision as a society. How much should I be willing to pay to get a degree? So those are those things, because if we start acting as that chaperone who makes all the decisions for everyone, people are still going to be unhappy. I still have people whose children were, because of central deduction, sent into colleges where they now want to migrate. Some of them actually leave after first year because they don't think it is worth it, or they cannot cope with all those pressures of studying in different cities. So we only look at that one part. We have been dealing with the whole lot. We will never have a perfect ideal solution. An ideal would be that state or some other organization or somewhere somebody took responsibility for paying the cost of education, and the parents not having to pay so much to get their students through the colleges. That would have been an ideal situation. Everybody gets an education at an affordable price. But mind you, when you say कि 9.5 लाख रुपए से बढ़ गई है फीस, which I know, but आप ये देख लें कि जब 9.5 लाख रुपए फीस थी, तो 9.5 लाख रुपए कितने लोग पे कर सकते थे? Even that was way beyond, and lots of students were actually dropped out because they could not pay. Now that number has actually increased with this fee going up to 1.4 million or something. But see, that really is not the perfect solution. That I concede.
Yeah. So it's the same, just continuing the same topic. Let's talk about the foreign students. And as you know, in the previous system, there was a quota for the foreign students. Foreign students mean those who are dual nationals or those who have been living abroad and have the education, the FEC from abroad. And then they will have their specific quota and they will apply on that. And that was a very useful source of foreign remittance as well. Since this time, the PMC has this rule that the colleges should print their policies 1 year in advance, and they could not do it because there was no time for it. So those students have gone into a disadvantage. Now they have to compete with the local students in the MDCAT or through the state equivalent score, and which becomes very difficult because they're coming from a different system. So I believe this time very few foreign students are going to find admission. And it's not only the admission, because those are the people, they on one hand want to make their children doctors, but at the same point, they also want them to be introduced to the local culture, the Pakistani culture, because inside their Pakistani, they've been living abroad for many, many years, because they want to come to Pakistan and they want to have the same culture. And this 5 years would incorporate that culture into those children as well. So this was very important for the 5 years as well. This time we are losing that, both part of it. Many students will not be able to get admission. What do you think about it?
The way I look at it, and mind you, this is for this year only. This is the only year that we are making the deciding on this quotas and all for. First thing is that I have been I'm in touch with expatriates. So we have had these discussions on various forums, and their logic was that since our children go through A levels mostly, and that has got an IBCC equivalence, which actually puts them at a disadvantage. So we should be given a quota. Our problem was that if that is we form that as the basis of that argument, then we will have to take into account people, a large number of students who are actually applying after their A levels within Pakistan as well, because then they are actually applying on the basis of the same equivalence. The second is that, and let me say something that people may not like it, but even I want my child to be to come and study in Pakistan, and we would love to have them come and study in Pakistan. But the child needs to compete to get into Pakistan. I mean, why would I not ask my child to not be able to compete? Because eventually when they come there, they are going to have to compete with the same students. So at this point, what I'm doing is I'm saying कि मेरा बेटा या बेटी पाकिस्तान में इसलिए चला जाएगा क्योंकि उसको कोटा पे कम मार्क्स के अंदर एडमिशन मिल जाएगा. That really is not the best logic that I would want to. I mean, I understand their submission that IBC actually equivalence actually puts candidates, those students at a position of disadvantage. That applies to our students applying from within the country and those students from. But saying that just because I am sending this child and paying a foreign exchange, I mean that there was the other argument was foreign exchange. The problem is then when we had this kind of quotas, then that same pretext of foreign quota was actually misused by people who on one way or another managed to squeeze into that. So whenever we create a quota, what we are trying to do is actually create a loophole wherein people, and then we would actually be facing complaints where they would say that I am a genuine expatriate and somebody else has actually come and served my quota. So on the basis of that, we at this point said, all right, so we are not doing that. We are only allowing on merit. There is a Supreme Court judgment against the quotas, which has not been kind of followed as well. 5 years back, there was a court in a decision by the Supreme Court of Pakistan that these quotas, but I am not going to touch on that. Our basis was that if you are applying from overseas, then just because you're applying from overseas should not let your child with lesser marks to get in and be a part of it. That would always be debated. And so I am not going to go on defending it and saying that this is the only right way. There's argument in favor of it. There's argument against it. It was done this year. It may be revised, reviewed. We may have a much more informed debate over the year and go on and see how things stand on the quotas and talk about it. So I'm not going to say that यही एक perfect solution था और हमने किया. Principal stand के तौर पे हम feel करते हैं that these admissions should not be based on quotas. But अगर हम next year तक हम के वाले admissions के लिए if we can have a more meaningful dialogue on this, then these are the kind of decisions that can be reviewed as well.
Great. So, Taqi, let's move on from undergraduate education to postgraduate education. And as you know, we have different education institutions. We have College of Physicians on one hand, which is doing a good job. At the same point, we have universities who are also doing a good job, but their standards vary. one university is at a very high level, the other is at a totally different level. So the standards of postgraduate education are different in the country. As a regulator, PMC, this also should be the responsibility of the PMC to raise a minimum standards where everybody, every university, every college has to raise to that point. And at the same point, this also will give more weightage to our postgraduate degree. Because if you see internationally, countries who have one system of postgraduate education, their degree is given more weightage as compared to those who have different universities at different levels.
I'm glad you brought it because this topic is closer to my heart than anything else, and you know that, and I know that. So the answer. So I'll just take the 2 degrees part first, and then go on and look and talk about the solution that we have come up with. Yes, we have this problem. We have got CPSP, we got the universities awarding those clinical degrees. So let's start with the clinical degrees first, because clinical competence is something for which the postgraduate examination in clinical subject is directly under the purview of Pakistan Medical Commission, nobody else. So this is purely Pakistan Medical Commission. No university, no HSC, nobody, just Pakistan Medical Commission. That's our responsibility first. So we have got 2 pathways now. People coming in from the college, people coming in from the universities getting to a degree. So let's see what the law says, and then we'll move on to where we are going. The law says that Pakistan Medical Commission shall inspect and recognize postgraduate medical institutions within the country, which means from now onwards, any postgraduate degree or education can only occur in a in PMC recognized institution. You cannot just go and say that we are starting a postgraduate program here. It has to be in a hospital or an institution which is recognized first by Pakistan Medical Commission. Therein, second part is Pakistan Medical Commission shall recognize the programs of postgraduate study and shall inspect and recognize the programs of where postgraduate training is taking place. And third is about the trainers and everything. And then goes on to the foreign postgraduate qualification, which means that once a program is there, the Pakistan Medical Commission then has the responsibility and the authority to inspect it and then recognize it or otherwise. So now the second part is about the postgraduate itself. So postgraduate, the law says that Pakistan Medical Commission shall recognize the qualification, alternate and additional qualifications in the country and abroad. So qualification by law is because CPSP is the postgraduate degree awarding authority according to 1962 Act. So it is an agreement that FCPS is that qualification which actually entitles someone to be a specialist. We're moving towards the definition and specialist because that's the next thing that we'll be moving to. Any qualification from within the country or abroad which is equivalent to FCPS would then be an equivalent qualification. And the third would be an additional qualification. That additional qualification can be a qualification in case of someone who has acquired it after the primary qualification, or alternate qualification would be that additional qualification, like you have somebody in orthopedics then goes on and gets a pediatric orthopedics or some other qualification that you may introduce. or this qualification may be a degree or diploma that you have earned, which puts you on the license as that additional skill set, does not entitle you to become a specialist as defined in the specialist register by FCPS, but still goes on the license like those minor diplomas that we have in our country. So what is happening here is the way we are looking at it, that now we've got two pathways, masters and the FCPS. They've been at loggerheads as well. You know that, and I know that. So now what happens is that as recently as a month back, we had a lot of MD/MS programs lying unrecognized, uninspected by Pakistan Medical Dental Commission. We had about 50 pending inspections there. And we still had to our academic board is still forming the criteria for inspection and all that. So what we've done is we have gone on, and as a council decided that if in a CPS, in a PMC recognized institution, either CPSP or a university wants to start a program, they can, after ensuring that all the criteria are met, start a program. PMC shall inspect the program when it is running. I mean, it is the responsibility of like CPSP or the university to ensure that all the infrastructure, including the supervisor, the training facilities, everything are there, they are in place. And then PMC shall recognize the program when it is running, as it is running. And based on that, we'll move to two things. So if that program is deficient in certain areas, then we are going to ask them to go get this completed, these competencies achieved in a PMC recognized program where they exist. We have also, if they have already passed an exam, because some of these programs had already completed their courses and held their exams, and the results were held by different universities because they were not recognized. We said that if they have passed their exams and we find that there were certain areas where training was deficient, then we can ask those candidates or those recipients to go and complete those competencies before they get on the license. The idea is that when we give a license to practice to a specialist, we have to ensure the society that this person has got the requisite competencies. That's the only way we can not only give confidence in our license. The first thing that I talked about when we started our reason for our being, that when the Pakistan Medical Commission license now is a license to practice, which means that holder of that license is, on behalf of holder of that license is Pakistan Medical Commission is given an assurity to the masses to the public that you go get treated by this person. This person has got this skill set which this license claims. So we have to ensure the sanctity of that license within the country, and that's the only way we can ensure the sanctity of that license abroad with the other regulatory authorities. Coming back to two systems, at some point in time that needs to integrate. Our biggest problem is at this first point to integrate the curricula of at least all the universities, put them in one place. There's been a discussion on this. Lots of universities have agreed on this, and they are suggesting to form one inter-university board with a common curriculum and common pathways. They need to be aligned with what the CPSP is teaching. So from whichever pathway, because remember, they are being trained in the same unit and most likely under the same supervisors. So there's one candidate who is a trainee who is working towards fellowship, the other one towards the master's degree under the same supervisor in the same department. So they cannot have two different learning outcomes, and they cannot have two different set of competencies. They need to end up there and finally be certified, having achieved the same level of competence. Only then we can have the two qualifications, alternate and the qualification, at par with each other. But so instead of focusing on, at this point, FCPS or MS, we are actually going to inspect the facilities. So we are going to inspect the programs. So we come to a unit X, which is running a, let's say, FCPS training program, a postgraduate program. We look at all the facilities, how the trainees are being trained, well, they are reaching their competency milestones. And irrespective of whether they are FCPS or MDMS, we will say, look here, this competency is missing. Go get it somewhere. Unless that happens, we are not going to give you the license. I hope that clarifies things a little.
Yes, and I'm glad you said all this, because this is something I used to think about it, and I wish this could happen in this country. It has happened in different countries, and I'm so happy to know all these things from you. Just one query in my mind is, now there will be two different inspections of an academic unit. One will be by the PMC, the other will be by the CPSP, because they are also having their own inspection and accrediting the unit. How will these two inspections be different? Is there any different boundary set between the two, or both of the inspections would be doing the same thing? Because there will be duplication, number one. Number two is, we all know that the way the postgraduate medical education are being regulated, even if it is CPSP or the university, whatever, I won't blame anyone. On paper, it's different. But when it comes to the implementation phase, it's not being implemented in true spirit. And the regulator, they turn a blind eye towards it because of so many reasons. So I think this will be one area where the PMC can actually fit in and see whether those standards set by the universities or by the College of Physicians, they are actually being implemented or not. And also, we need to define the boundaries where the CPSP inspections, what would they do, and what the PMC inspections would they do, because we should not create problems for the institutions as well.
Yeah, I think, see, the point is that CPSP, or the universities for that matter, should be responsible for the sanctity of their degrees. Like we are responsible for the sanctity for our license. The CPSP and involvement in that starts at the very outset, and we do not wish to impinge on the areas which are CPSP, which means that if they start a program, they are the ones who actually devise the curriculum. They are the ones who determine what this qualification, because if somebody asks me, so what does being a urologist mean on a on a license? And based on the fact that we consider FCPS as that yardstick on the basis of which we license someone as a specialist, we would be going and saying, look at the FCPS curriculum and look at the learning outcomes. So anybody who has achieved those learning outcomes according to our license is a urologist. It is the responsibility of CPSP to actually protect the sanctity of their degree. So they would and should be actually inspecting with the same objective. And as I said, it is a matter of sanctity of our license. So if we are both working towards the main objective, I don't see any conflict there, because we are working towards the main objective. The problem occurs only where the objectives do not align, or where we are willing to make compromises on our stated objectives. So that's where a licensing authority comes in, because licensing authority is making sure that the institutions which are awarding that diploma or degree certificate have got are meeting those objectives. Yes, initially, probably when we go in, and that's something that when we go and give them the feedback, even not if I'm not sure, I'm sure not at the in the CPSP hierarchy, but there would be disruption in the minds of people who have even for the trainees, because what we're doing is we are disrupting them and getting them out of their comfort zone and telling them that, look here, you may have trained, you may have gotten your piece of paper, which is a very precious piece of paper, but hang on, this is the competence that we, your own institution at the outset said you would acquire, but we do not find this facility having the capacity to impart that. So we think you need to go and get it somewhere else. So that's all we are saying. We are not really telling them what competencies you should be achieving. That's for the college to decide how they are being received. But they are determining the learning outcomes. We are telling them that you agreed that this program would have these things. Some of them we don't find here, so please make sure that they're there if you do want this program to be on the license. So yes, initially probably people will have to get used to this idea of somebody coming and telling them that hang on, you are not reaching your goals. But that's what the regulator is meant for. I mean, as I said at the outset, that Pakistan Medical and Dental Council actually forgot their role as the practice regulator. At the end of the day, as far as society is concerned, the number of students who are parents and students and families who are involved in the process of undergraduate medical education runs in thousands. But the recipients of our care are hundreds of millions. So that's where our ultimate focus should be, to make sure that that license delivers what it promises.
Great. Let's go into one more thing that actually pinches all the young graduates, and that is the NLE. And from my personal perspective, I think it's a wonderful step that the PMC has taken that will standardize the undergraduate education in the whole country, and the differences that were there in the standards, that would be reduced. So I appreciate this step. However, this is putting an extra burden on our graduates. Now they will have to pass another exam. Now, if we look into the system of the United States, we do USMLE, and that is the licensing exam. And based on that, we get admissions into the residency program. So they don't have to pass another exam. Here, we will have to pass a Part 1 exam after this to enter into a post-graduate education. So this NLE, either we use this as a pass or fail exam and make it whether you deserve to practice or you don't deserve to practice. At the same point, we can also actually make it a benchmark where people can get into different residency programs, and the need for the Part 1 would no more be there. Just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
So let's start with what we are looking at this year. And let me share the dream then. Let me share the dream then. A common dream, I think, yours and mine and everyone's. That would be. And if I was a student and I knew what NLE entails, I would actually be looking forward to it. Kind of contrary to the scare that has been created in people's students' minds. See, the first thing is that, as you said, at the outset, what we are saying is that let's start with having a license exam which ensures that you have got the requisite capacity to practice medicine, surgery, whatever what is stated on the license, because we've got so many universities awarding the degrees, and we will need to have a uniformity across the country. Moving forward, that exam, my dream would be, serves as not only an exam which entitles you into that postgraduate courses, but also which is aligned with other regulatory exams all over the world in a way that based on that exam would actually gets you exemption from few entrance exams in the other countries. For that, we need to be entering into a dialogue. But in order to get into a dialogue, we realize that a lot of our students actually do not get the opportunity or to miss the opportunity to go and work and train overseas and come back is because they have a deterrent of another difficult exam which they have to, licensing exams that they have to pass. But first thing is that we understand that come 2024 and our accreditation with WFME, we have to provide them with these kind of proofs in order to stay on the list of WFME. Tell you to share a little, when we were deciding on the issue of foreign medical graduates and the foreign medical universities that we recognize put up, and there was a lot of this controversy because we had to kind of put brakes on something which was nasty, disastrous that was happening to our healthcare system and education. We looked at one thing, and that was, is the regulatory authority of that country aligned with the World Federation of Medical Education and their goals? Interestingly, we ourselves are not on that list yet. We are still waiting for our applications to be moved because we have to meet certain standards. And this is one of those standards that we need to meet, a proper formal structured way of awarding a license. So this actually is not only meant to authenticate the degrees and ensure that a uniform minimum standard has been met within the country, but this is important to continue our relationship with the overseas regulatory bodies, which will ensure that our students can go on and even appear for USMLE or PLAB past 2024. Because if we don't, 2024 is the deadline. If we don't, then none of our students can go and appear for USMLE or appear for PLAB or any one of those entrance exams. So this is something that is critical to us. As I said, we would be thinking of taking this forward gradually. We don't want to make it very difficult for students, but gradually we want to take it to those 3 steps over the years, so that the student who then passes this then not only qualifies for postgraduate training, but also qualifies for recognition of that exam for overseas applications. So that's the dream that we have, but we need to start moving towards it. That's the whole idea.
Wonderful. Taqi, we are having a number of questions. I think I have taken a lot of time myself. We are having a number of questions from the participants. So I would request Ibrahim to start with your questions as well.
Yeah, sure.
So these questions are very short, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So the first question, which is being repeated by many of our guests, is regarding the recognition of the basic sciences and their courses by being shifted to HEC now. A lot of people have reservations that these basic sciences degrees, these MPhil and PhDs, were first recognized by PMDC, and they have had a longer experience with PMDC. And now they're being shifted to HSC. People have some reservations regarding it. So what would you like to say about it?
So first thing is that no, in a way, they are still recognized by Pakistan Medical Commission. So let me explain something. what Pakistan Medical Commission is supposed to do in this is, Pakistan Medical Commission will give a minimum criteria for the faculty in a undergraduate medical college, which means they will say that this is the minimum required to become a part of the faculty. This qualification is the minimum required to become a part of the faculty. B, this is the minimum number of faculty required to teach this number of students. And so these are the two minimums that Pakistan Medical Commission is doing. So when we say this is the minimum requirement, then we are giving them the standard of faculty, what qualification they should have. So that ownership of that qualification is not moving away from PMC. We still take ownership of that. However, we go on and say that in addition to that minimum criteria, an institution has the freedom to put additional criteria. Like I say, that in order to become a member of the faculty in a certain basic science subject, you require an MPhil degree. That's the minimum requirement. And we say that you are going to require something like 10 faculty members with an MPhil degree to teach X number of students. Then that is the minimum criteria that every institution will supposed to have. So that ownership is not gone. PhD, of course, PhD would go on and is recognized not only by Pakistan Medical Commission, but by HEC as that highest academic degree that anyone can have. So there's nothing that can take anything away from. The second part of it is the endorsement of those degrees on medical license. So over there, the problem was that this license is a practice license, which means that I put this up on my practice, reassuring the public that this license and this degree endorsed on this license is a reassurance that I have got this skill set, which I can deliver to my patients. So that skill set, that PhD or those academic degrees are not those skill sets. Now, so that should not be a part of practice license. Now, there is something that came up as a consequence, and that is anxiety amongst our basic science brothers, sisters, the faculty, that previously, whenever we go anywhere, to our public service commission, to employers, the universities, the colleges, they ask us about that degree being endorsed on Pakistan by PMDC, and they would put it up on the register. See, the problem was that license, practice license by PMDC was at some point converted into a registration of all the qualifications. So now there are various ideas that are floating, and that is we need to reassure if that requires Pakistan Medical Commission, and if people are a little uncomfortable with transition from PMC to HSC and saying कि जी अब हमारी ये जो degree है इसको फिर कौन recognize करेगा? So we are thinking of having a system in place, maybe wherein we have a kind of a certification saying that this degree, Pakistan Medical Commission recognized this degree, which qualifies this person to be on a member of the faculty. We already have a faculty list on our website. So anyone who is a member of a faculty and is registered with an institution as a faculty member can be identified from our website as a faculty member. But if that requires another piece of paper which reassures all the regulators or all the potential employers, that is something that we are willing to consider, and we shall consider and put it up so that nobody actually goes on and says कि आपके पास ये piece of paper नहीं है इसलिए आप इस post के लिए apply नहीं कर सकते. So we've just had some discussions and we are working on that as well.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is regarding the medical colleges. A lot of people feel that the applicants are much more, the quantity of applicants is much more than the available seats. It's a two-part question. So the first question is that has Pakistan Medical Commission devised a solution to counter this problem? The second part is that the private medical colleges have increased their fees many folds. How does PMC plan to regulate that?
See, first thing, so I'll take the first one first. So no matter what you do, there always would be more applicants, more aspirants for medical college seats than the number of seats. The number of doctors that the country needs are that the country produces or the country licenses should be based on what the country needs and not how many people want to become doctors. I mean, yes, like it or not, it's a hard fact that at the end of the day, these are very, very competitive positions. You and I and all of us actually have reached here after very intense competition with our peers. And when we were getting admitted, some of our friends were those disappointed ones who could not make it. And still, they went on and did very well on the other professions. So it has to be competitive, and we need to realize that some of them would not be able to make it at this and during this. And most interestingly and very, very sadly, our public sector merit quota in Punjab, I can say for sure, and even in KPK, would end somewhere around 90%. And then the other private colleges. And there's lots and lots of students between that 90% and the ones who would not even be able to apply for those seats because they simply cannot afford them. So we are losing a lot of talent because of affordability. And this is something that we need to address as a society, whether we find some ways to finance them or student loans or something, but those are those things for the societies at large to decide. PMC alone cannot solve that problem. So when people ask me, so increasing the fee, तो गरीब का बच्चा क्या करेगा? तो मैं तो कहता हूँ कि गरीब का बच्चा तो 9.5 लाख भी नहीं दे सकता था. I mean, कितने पेरेंट्स हैं जो लाख रुपए महीना अपने एक बच्चे की पढ़ाई के लिए दे सकते हैं? So that's something we still are having a huge gap of. Second, fees, private fee. I can understand that fees bars to जो institutions हैं उन्होंने injudiciously ज़्यादा बढ़ा ली होगी. लेकिन एक बात आप मैं हम सब जानते हैं कि कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस मैं ना फैसला कर सकता हूँ कितनी है ना कोई और कर सकता है. ये बिजनेस डिसीजंस होती हैं. I mean, private medical colleges, when we let the medical colleges set up those private medical colleges, तो हमने एक दरवाजा तो खोला एक प्राइवेट बिजनेस का. अब उसके अंदर जो कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस है वो और कितनी प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए, ये फैसले एक्चुअली आर्बिट्रेरी नहीं हो सकते. और मैं बैठा बैठा नहीं कह सकता कि जी अच्छा नहीं 9 लाख नहीं तो 9.5 लाख तो 10 लाख रुपए फीस ले लो तो ठीक होगा. जब लास्ट टाइम ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट में फैसला हुआ कि 9.5 लाख रुपए ले लो, तो उसके बाद आगा खान गए और उन्होंने कहा फाइन, थैंक यू वेरी मच, आपने फैसला कर दिया, हम कॉलेज बंद करने लगे हैं, हम 9.5 लाख रुपए में एडमिशन नहीं दे सकते. So the Chief Justice then had to say, treat Aga Khan differently, इनको तो खत्म कर. So हमने एक काम तो फैसला कर लिया. इसका मतलब है कि अगर कोई और आगा खान बनाना चाहेगा तो वो तो नहीं बना सकता, बिकॉज सिंपली 9.5 लाख रुपए में हमने खुद फैसला कर लिया था कि आगा खान नहीं बन सकता. बाय द वे आगा खान की फीस इस वक्त 24.5 लाख है. एंड with scholarships taken, Aga Khan Foundation is pumping lots of money into actually subsidizing student fee. तो वो कहते हैं कि जी 24 लाख रुपए में भी सब्सिडाइज करना पड़ेगा. हमें ये भी देखना पड़ेगा कि पब्लिक सेक्टर में, मुझे नहीं मालूम बट वी हैव फिगर्स, पब्लिक सेक्टर कॉलेजेस में एक स्टूडेंट को बनाने पे सरकार कितना पैसे खर्च करती है. दैट वी नेवर इवन थिंक अबाउट इट. सो उसके साथ आप किस तरह रैशनलाइज करते हैं, दीज आर कॉम्प्लेक्स. सो जब हम आर्बिट्रेरली कहते हैं किसी पब्लिक सेक्टर मेडिकल कॉलेज को तुम 9.5 लाख या 10 लाख से ज्यादा फीस नहीं ले सकते, तो अब हमारा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हमने तो कह दिया अब अगर उसने बिजनेस चलाना है तो वो क्या करेगा, वो कहीं ना कहीं से डंडी मारेगा। यू गेट द पॉइंट। क्या हुआ था, हमने ये कर भी लिया, हमने सब पुलिसिंग भी कर ली, बट आई कैन टेल यू एंड यू नो दैट कि बहुत सारे प्राइवेट मेडिकल कॉलेजेस के अंदर जो उनके हॉस्पिटल्स थे वो खाली पड़े थे, वहां कोई पेशेंट्स नहीं। So that most essential critical component of that patient of the student learning, that patient care to which those students need to have access was missing. अब उसकी वो rationalize ये करते थे, and I am not their advocate, मैं ना जानता हूँ ना मैं उसके, I am not an expert on that as well, कि जी फिर अस्पताल तो नहीं चलाया जा सकता इतने पैसों साथ साथ. So at some point they are going to cut corners. Mind you, at the end of the day, हमारा प्राइमरी ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू हैव अ क्वालिटी डॉक्टर जिसके लिए हम उनको आंसरेबल कर सकते हैं कि आपको हमने इजाजत दी डॉक्टर बनाने की, आपको हमने लाइसेंस दिया, नाउ इफ यू प्रोड्यूस अ सब स्टैंडर्ड डॉक्टर, वी विल फोर्स यू टू पे द प्राइस फॉर दैट, नॉट प्रोड्यूसिंग अ क्वालिटी डॉक्टर, क्योंकि एंड में व्हाट द नेशन नीड्स इज क्वालिटी डॉक्टर्स. अगर हम उसके अंदर इस चीज पे एम्फेसिस शुरू करते हैं कि तुम सस्ते डॉक्टर बना के दो, तो और उसकी कॉस्ट पे वो क्वालिटी कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाए. सो आई एम नॉट सेइंग, आई एम नॉट इवन जस्टिफाइंग कि कौन जो फीस ले रहे हैं सारी ठीक है या नहीं है, बट ये फिर पेरेंट्स ने भी डिसाइड करना है कि अगर वो एक ऐसे कॉलेज में जो 18 लाख रुपए फीस ले रहे हैं, लेकिन वो अगर उस जो आरिफ साहब ने पहले बताया था कि उन इंस्पेक्शन हुई थी और उनमें उसकी परसेंटेज कहीं 70% पे थी, तो मैं अपने बच्चे को वहां क्यों भेज रहा हूँ? So these are those decisions that need to be made. और एक NLE अब एक फिल्टर आ जाएगा कि जब एक कॉलेज के बच्चे NLE पास, अल्लाह करे सब पास हों, बट अगर नहीं कर पाएंगे तो then even the parents have to sit down and think about it कि यार बच्चे को कहाँ भेजें. आप देख लेना एक NLE के बाद उसके कॉन्सिक्वेंस में अगले साल मेडिकल कॉलेजेस में एडमिशन पे इम्पैक्ट हो जाएगा. But that's not a perfect answer to the question. But we can understand that medical education जितनी बहुत महंगी हो चुकी है, और that's the cost that, but उसके अंदर जितने बच्चे मिस कर रहे हैं और उनसे कम नंबरों वाले बच्चे आ रहे हैं, we are losing potentially better doctors that could have been used. That I concede. You all need to realize.
Yes, sir. Sir, in the end, मैं कुछ questions जो हैं जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा commonly लोगों ने पूछे हैं, मैं वो put up करना चाहूँगा ताकि आपका भी time हम ज़्यादा ना लें. Sir, many of the people are asking this one question that with getting a proper license, a full license, why isn't a PMC providing a license card with it? The other part of this question is that why the postgraduate qualifications cannot be put up on the license anymore.
तो पहला तो कार्ड का है. मैंने किसी बच्चे से पूछा, and that's on the lighter note, so please don't take it seriously. मैंने कहा यार ये तुम्हें इस कार्ड का मसला क्या है, इतना इंसिस्ट क्यों कर रहे हो? उसने कहा कि जी वो बैंक जब कोई वो ट्रैफिक वाला रोकता है, पुलिस वाला, तो हम उसे दिखाते हैं मैं डॉक्टर हूं तो चालान नहीं होता. I mean, that's on the lighter note. But देखिए, हम तो we are trying to move in a direction where जैसे दुनिया भर का लाइसेंस होता है, अगर आप देखें तो अगर आप GMC का देखें ना लाइसेंस, तो उसके ऊपर ना पिक्चर होती है, और इवन US के हर जगह के लाइसेंस ना पिक्चर होती है, इट जस्ट इज अ पीस ऑफ पेपर सेइंग दैट दिस पर्सन इज ऑन. और उसकी कन्फर्मेशन करनी होती है तो आप जाते हैं और उनकी वेबसाइट पे और देख लेते हैं कि हाँ जी ये वाकई ये लाइसेंस प्रैक्टिशनर है. इट जस्ट सेज दैट दिस इज अ प्रैक्टिशनर इन दिस. और हम वो मूव कर रहे हैं कि हम तो ये कह रहे हैं कि जी अल्लाह खैर करे, as we put kind of introduce that and it becomes functional, तो आप अपना जाके अपना वो डालें, प्रिंट आउट निकाल लें, उसके ऊपर बार कोड लगा होगा. Hello, can you hear me?
जी सर.
ओके, सो बार कोड लगा होगा, आप अपना जाके अपना लाइसेंस और अपना एक प्रिंट आउट खुद निकाल लें या शेयर कर लें। सो और अगर आपको फिर उसके बावजूद भी एक फ्रेम कराने के लिए लाइसेंस चाहिए तो फिर हमें पैसे भेज दें, हमको बड़ा स्पेशल ग्लॉसी पेपर लगा के फ्रेम करा देंगे। कार्ड भी हम फिर शायद, अगर आप सब लोगों ने कहा कि हमें वाकई चाहिए, तो हम उस बजाय इसके हर एक को भेजें, हम फिर प्रॉब्ली थिंक अबाउट इट कि हम कहें अच्छा जी जिसको चाहिए वो हमें बता दे, हम आपके लिए कार्ड भी बना लेते हैं को डिजाइन करके और वो अच्छा सा वो भेज देंगे। तो दैट्स समथिंग दैट वी। जहां तक दूसरी बात है कि वाई आर द डिग्री, पहले भी मैंने उसका जवाब दिया कि जब हम कहते हैं ये लाइसेंस है तो लाइसेंस टू प्रैक्टिस है, तो उस लाइसेंस के ऊपर तो वही क्वालिफिकेशंस होनी चाहिए जिनका ताल्लुक लाइसेंस से है। ये लाइसेंस इसलिए दिया जाता है कि एक इसलिए नहीं दिया जाता कि मेरे लिए कोई तमगा है, बट लाइसेंस इसलिए दिया जाता है कि आप जिस तरह के ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस दिया जाता है कि if required I can produce this license to show that I can practice this and this was my area of competence। so उसका ताल्लुक तो प्योर क्लिनिकल कॉम्पिटेंस से है। अब जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा कि पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट क्वालिफिकेशंस जो कि जिनका ताल्लुक कॉम्पिटेंस से या प्रैक्टिस से नहीं है, उसके ऊपर हमने we are having a thinking thought about it कि कोई ऐसा हम दे दें, कोई सर्टिफाई कर दें कि लोगों को अगर ये डॉक्यूमेंट प्रोड्यूस करने की जरूरत पड़ रही है और वो फील करते हैं कि अभी कोई ऐसा प्रोसेस नहीं है कि जिसमें को रीअश्योर करा सकें, तो वी कैन देन हैव दैट काइंड ऑफ वे ऑफ डूइंग इट। we'll talk to HSC as well कि क्योंकि हमारी जो ट्रांजिशन हो रही है, वी हैव अ ट्रांजिशन कमेटी व्हिच इज वर्किंग ऑन ऑल दीज थिंग्स, तो हम इस चीज पे, बट रेस्ट एश्योर्ड there will be a way for people to show everyone that look here, this is the qualification I have and this entitles me to be on the faculty position in a medical college। तो यही चीज है जो बेसिक साइंसेस वालों को कर रही है, थोड़ा एंजाइटी डाल रही है, इसको हम एड्रेस इंशाल्लाह जल्दी कर देंगे। सेकंड क्वेश्चन जो सामने स्प्रिंग कर रहा है और इससे पहले कि आप पूछ लें, दैट इज अबाउट MD एंड MPhil एंड PhD पैथोलॉजी। that's a burning question। यहाँ पे एक अनफॉर्चुनेटली एक प्रॉब्लम आई। प्रॉब्लम ये थी कि and that's something that was not addressed कि MPhil is an academic degree। जो बाकी यूनिवर्सिटीज ने इवन जो प्रोग्राम्स वगैरह शुरू किए थे उन्होंने इतना कर लिया कि MD MS कर दिया और उनको एक्चुअली अपने करिकुलम जो थे उनके अंदर क्लियरली डिफाइन कर दिया, उनको अलाइन करके शुरू में जब भी कोई यूनिवर्सिटी अपनी कोई डिग्री को पाकिस्तान मेडिकल एंड डेंटल काउंसिल से रिकग्नाइज कराती थी, तो क्या होता था कि वो एक यूनिवर्सिटी में करिकुलम सबमिट होता था, वो करिकुलम के अंदर बताया जाता था कि लर्निंग आउटकम्स क्या हैं, किस तरह चलेगा, क्या क्या पढ़ाया जाएगा, सब चीज़ें होती थी। उस करिकुलम को अप्रूव किया जाता था पाकिस्तान मेडिकल डेंटल काउंसिल से और वो अप्लाई हो जाता। MPhil पैथोलॉजी के मेजॉरिटी जो करिकुलम सबमिट हुए, एंड आई हैड टू गो थ्रू most of the curricula submitted in the universities unfortunately were submitted as research curricula degrees। so उनके जो आपके जितने credit hours थे वो almost सारे के सारे were around research, animal research, lab research, जो didactic teaching और उसके और एग्जाम के थे, उसके अंदर क्लिनिकल कंपोनेंट नहीं दिया गया था। बट हुआ क्या कि इन रियलिटी वो लोग लैब्स में काम करते रहे, वो लैब्स को चलाते रहे। अब वो भी एक हकीकत है कि वो टीचर्स भी हैं, वो सब लोग फेलोशिप के प्रोग्राम्स भी वही चला रहे हैं। जो FCPS पैथोलॉजी के करिकुलम था वो बड़ा कैटेगोरिकली वो कहता था कि दिस इज क्लिनिकल पैथोलॉजी। वो क्लिनिकल पैथोलॉजी के तौर पे ही सबमिट हुआ, क्लिनिकल पैथोलॉजी के तौर पे ही वो चलता रहा, उसी हिसाब से एग्जामिन होता रहा। सो वो क्लिनिकल सब्जेक्ट के तौर पे थे, उनको रजिस्टर किया गया। ये MPhil में क्योंकि नहीं था। अब प्रॉब्लम देखिए, हमारी ये प्रॉब्लम होती है कि अगर हम एक डिग्री को लाइसेंस पे एज क्लिनिकल डिग्री लिखते हैं और कल को कहीं पे भी ये जाके चैलेंज हो जाती है किसी कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ में, देन वी आर आंसरेबल। जनाब ये तो आप डिग्री के आउटसेट में लिखा ही नहीं गया कि ये क्लिनिकल है, आपने कैसे दे दिया? क्योंकि रिमेंबर जब PMC किसी को क्लिनिकल कॉम्पिटेंस का सर्टिफिकेट देती है उसके लाइसेंस पे डालती है, तो अगर किसी अदालत में केस होता है तो पीएमसी भी रिस्पोंडेंट बन जाती है कि जी आपने लाइसेंस दिया था, क्या ये इस बंदे के पास ये कॉम्पिटेंस थी या आपने देखी कि जिसकी वजह से लाइसेंस दिया। हमें ये प्रॉब्लम की वजह से हमारे लिए एमफिल को, और पीएचडी तो प्योरली रिसर्च डिग्री, अब उसके दो तीन पहलू हो गए। पहला पहलू ये है कि हमारी बहुत सारी लेबोरेटरीज कंट्री की ऑलमोस्ट सारी की सारी एमफिल पैथोलॉजी रन कर रही, दैट्स अ रियलिटी। सो दैट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ प्रिविलेजेस, क्योंकि ये देखिए तीन इसके टीयर्स आ जाते हैं। एक, आपका लाइसेंस है, आपको लाइसेंस देता है, रेगुलेटर देता है, वो कहता है कि जी ये क्लिनिकल कॉम्पिटेंस है, ये कॉम्पिटेंस को हम लाइसेंस कर रहे हैं। दूसरी होती है कि जो, बल्कि बीच की बात छोड़ो क्रेडेंशियलिंग की, क्योंकि क्रेडेंशियलिंग तो आपकी प्रोफेशनल सोसाइटीज करती हैं, जो अभी हमारे पास मैकेनिज्म ही नहीं है। तीसरी चीज होती है प्रिविलेजेस। मैं एक हॉस्पिटल में काम करने जाता हूँ, मैं कहता हूँ जी मैं क्रिटिकल केयर फिजिशियन हूँ, वो मुझे क्रिटिकल केयर फिजिशियन के तौर पे काम करने की प्रिविलेजेस दे देती है। सो आई परफॉर्म ऑल द टास्क दैट आर रिक्वायर्ड ऑफ अ क्रिटिकल केयर फिजिशियन। अगर आप एक ऑर्थोपेडिक सर्जन हैं, वो आपको प्रिविलेजेस देंगे, लेकिन अगर आप फर्ज कहते हैं कि जी मैंने स्पाइन भी करनी है, तो आपको कहेंगे कि हम आपको स्पाइन के प्रिविलेजेस नहीं दे सकते, आपकी स्पाइन की ट्रेनिंग जो है वो हमारे लिहाज से डेफिशिएंट नहीं है, या हमारे पास फैसिलिटीज नहीं है स्पाइन की। सो प्रिविलेजेस जो है वो इंस्टीट्यूशंस देते हैं या आपके जो हेल्थ केयर रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज देते हैं। हमने अभी क्लियरली कह भी दिया है, एंड वी आर इन टच विद द रेगुलेटर्स, द रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज, जैसे हेल्थ केयर कमीशन, क्योंकि सवाल तो उन्होंने पूछना होता है। अगर केपीके में भी हेल्थ केयर कमीशन बन चुका है, पंजाब में जरा ज्यादा एक्टिव है, सिंध में भी है, बलूचिस्तान में भी बन रहा है, बट हेल्थ केयर कमीशन या आपके जो एम्प्लॉयर हैं, मसलन हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट है आपका, प्रोविंशियल हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट, वो दे सकते हैं। और हमने उसके ऊपर क्लियरली हमने अपने मिनट्स में काउंसिल ने कह दिया है कि अगर रेगुलर जो एम्प्लॉयर्स हैं वो ये प्रिविलेजेस देना चाहते हैं एमफिल को कि वो लेबोरेटरीज को रन करें, तो हमें कोई एतराज नहीं। हम we have no problem with the privileges being granted to MPhil pathology. So ये प्रॉब्लम हमारा लाइसेंस के ऊपर एंडोर्स करने का ये है कि क्योंकि we do not have the curriculum submitted to us to support के ये clinical degrees है. Second, HSC has got a major problem with that. वो कहते हैं कि जनाब अगर आप इसको फिर क्लिनिकल डिग्री देते हैं तो फिर हम इसको एज एकेडमिक कैसे रिकग्नाइज करके, और इसको हम फैकल्टी पोजीशंस के लिए, एक तरफ आप कहते हैं ये एकेडमिक डिग्री है, फैकल्टी पोजीशन के लिए रिकग्नाइज करो, दूसरी तरफ आप कहते हैं ये क्लिनिकल डिग्री है, तो इसको, so these are those areas which are kind of more like legal issues. We're trying to work out where we have to work within the boundaries of law. So उसके अंदर अंदर हम ये कर रहे हैं to ensure कि उनकी कोई भी जो प्रिविलेजेस हैं वो इफेक्ट ना हो। फैकल्टी पे तो कोई सवाल ही नहीं है। एमफिल जो जिन पोजीशंस में पढ़ा रहे थे, जो उनकी पोजीशन थी, पीएचडीज, वो पोजीशन इज प्रोटेक्टेड, दैट विल नॉट चेंज। वो तो हमारा एकेडमिक बोर्ड स्टैंडर्ड बना रहे हैं, उसके अंदर वो डाल देगा आपको मिनिमम क्राइटेरिया के अंदर, सो दे गेट द फैकल्टी। सो आई होप दैट आंसर्स द क्वेश्चन।
Yes,
I'm not
sir.
sure it makes people happy, but that's the answer.
Thank you so much for answering this, sir. बहुत डिटेल में और बहुत अच्छे तरीके से आपने हर एक क्वेश्चन को जवाब दिया. I would like to ask Professor Dr. Mohammad Arif Khan Saab to take the podium and say a couple of words about our today's webinar.
So let me thank our guest, Dr. Arshad Taqi, for being with us. Arshad, it was a wonderful session. हमारे अपने जहन में बहुत सारी चीजें क्लियर हो गई हैं, and I'm sure कि all our viewers, they are now better educated as far as the PMC is concerned. This webinar would be on our website, and anybody can go and attend it and can open it up and can watch it for the future reference as well. And those who are not watching it now, they will be watching it if they go to our website. And once again, all the participants, thank you very much for being with us. And Arshad, wonderful session. Thank you very much. And we pray and we wish that you have all the energies and all the time to serve this PMC and make it a better institution and help us in regulating our medical education.
Well, thank you very much, Ji. This was wonderful. This was a great opportunity. वो जो चप्पल कबाब आप मेहमानों को खिलाते हैं वो मैं वर्चुअल खा लूंगा but anyway, I look forward to coming over one day and actually physically meeting everyone.
Inshallah. If we want to chappal kebab, we chappal kebab. Chappal kebab are different for different people.
Right, Ji. Okay, Ji.
Okay, Ji. Have a good day. Thank you so much, sir. Assalamu alaikum.